Hey folks, so I wanted to give just a little quick audio instructions for your upcoming research paper. In Blackboard there's a little paragraph that outlines the criteria for this research paper, and I want to go over that with you and help you think about ways of constructing this. So you've already had a little bit of experience with this doing your article analysis. And you certainly can use the same topic that you use for your analysis. You don't have to, but you certainly may. So first of all, you're going to have a topic, and this needs to have something to do with exceptionalities. So I'm going to give the example that I may want to learn something more about ADHD. And then all good researchers have to have a question going into it. Otherwise, you can look at so much material that you become overwhelmed. So focus your topic by asking a question. So my question might be, what should a general education teacher know about high school students who have been diagnosed with ADHD? So that's going to limit my research to high school. It's going to limit it to what a general education teacher would know, not a parent or not an administrator or not the general public, but what myself as a general education teacher I might need to know if I were to have a student with ADHD in my classroom. Now granted, each student is going to be different and have different needs, but generally speaking, what should I expect? And when I look at the criteria for the research paper, it says to include information on adapting instruction, managing classroom behavior, supporting social acceptance, creating a learning environment, and implemented accepted assistive technology if applicable. So I'm going to use those criteria to focus my questions. So I've already asked the question about what I should know about ADHD people, and now I'm going to ask the sub-questions. How would I adapt instruction for someone with ADHD? Again, it's generally speaking, it would be individualized for each student, but I'm going to try to find out information that will help me to think about ways to adapt instruction. My second question will be, how will I manage classroom behavior? So I'll look for information about what to do with ADHD children and how do we help them integrate into the classroom and work with others well, what techniques might be used if there are incidents. And then my third question will be, how do I support social acceptance? In other words, how will I help the student or students be accepted by his or her peers? My fourth question will be, how do I create a good learning environment for these ADHD children? And then finally, I'll look to see if there's any accepted assistive technology for children with ADHD. I'm going to think probably there's not a lot out there, but there may be some technological tools that can be used, and I'll certainly look hard for that. So assistive technology can be anything from a wheelchair for someone who's physically disabled, to Braille for a visually impaired person, to a computer for students who struggle with writing issues, or it could be computer programs for helping people who have cognitive issues. It could be anything. So assistive technology is really a broad span. And so that's how I'm going to focus my questions. And I'm going to look for 5 to 10 sources that will help me look at those questions. And then once I've found those sources, I'm going to read them carefully all the way through, and then I'm going to give them a second read with a more critical eye and with a pen in hand to take notes. I always, if I print them out, I like to annotate or write right on the page, but if I'm reading them online, I keep a piece of paper beside me and I write notes as I go along. What you don't want to do is cut and paste and lift text from an article and just patch them together and call it a research paper. That's not research. I don't want to see cutting and pasting. Now, that's not to say you can't use quotes from an article. You certainly may. But if you're going to use quotes, please make sure that you cite them properly. Direct quotations or quotations that are very close to direct quotations must be put in quotation marks with the complete citation with it. Now, if you go back and look at my examples from the article analysis, you'll see there's a bunch of ways of doing that. You can attribute what you have read by saying the author's name. So if you were reading something by me, you'd say Dean in parentheses, the publication year, always the publication year goes after the author's name, no matter where, whenever you mention it, always, okay? So Dean, year of publication, argues that, and then I would give my paraphrase or my direct quotation. Or if I want to be not attribute it that way, I could give the direct quotation and then put in the parentheses afterwards, Dean, comma, the year of publication, comma, page number, and then with the parentheses at the end, okay? Again, go back and look at those so you get those correct. This is where I get a lot of mix-up with people about how do you do these citations, because there's a bunch of ways of doing it. You can attribute, you can direct quote. So I'm going to look for these articles, and then I'm going to organize, which is very important. You're going to organize my paper with an introduction that introduces my topic and my question. And then I'm going to go through my questions. I'm going to address adapting instruction, classroom behavior, social acceptance, learning environment, and adaptive assistive technology. If there is anything else that you want to add, you certainly may, but these are the must-haves. Lots of times you'll find out interesting information for a general education teacher that you want to include. Please do. But just know I'm going to be looking for those. That's what's in the criteria, okay, when I've given you. And it's also a way for you to organize your paper, right? So a research paper is not just a summary of articles that you've read, glued together with an introduction and a conclusion. It's a thoughtful investigation of your research question. And so it has to have a central purpose, okay? What is your central question? And once I have that central question, I'll turn that into a thesis statement. So my central question is, what should a general education teacher know about high school students with ADHD? When I write my introduction, I'm going to turn that into a thesis statement, okay? And move forward. I can state it as a question in my introduction if I want to, but I also need to give a purpose to the writing, okay? So what I might say is, some general information about a general education high school teacher must be knowledgeable about the children in his or her classroom, and particularly he or she must understand the various accommodations and modifications one must know for having students with ADHD in the classroom, and then go on to provide that information, all right? When you look for your sources, please use peer-reviewed sources. This is an academic exercise. This is an academic paper. Please do not use a Google search. Do not use help sites. I just said about ADHD. You can go to a Google search and find all kinds of help sites or information sites on ADHD, but those are not peer-reviewed. I don't want those as part of your information. I want you to use peer-reviewed articles, okay? You can define ADHD, from a definitive website, but the information you find for the questions that you posit should be or must be from peer-reviewed articles and journals. You can get those from the library databases, the Marvel databases. You can look in Google Scholar, but make sure that they are, professional journals. Lots of times in Google Scholar you have to pay for them, and you don't want to do that. You can get them free. You can get full text from the databases at the UMA library. I think that's it. Most of you have written research papers in the past. If you have not and you need further instruction, please let me know, or contact the Writing Center. The Writing Centers in Bangor and Augusta and University Centers are ready to help you with your questions about research papers, about citation, about attribution, about reference pages. There's a lot to think about. Remember, we're using APA format. If you are still uncomfortable with that, please review APA format. You can use the Purdue OWL site. You can use the American Psychological Association site. If you want to go to the library and actually get the handbook for APA, you certainly can do that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I think you can find what you want online. But make sure that you understand how to cite these sources. It's one of the difficulties that I see students having as we move forward. So I think that's it. If you have any questions, please let me know.